You ready to beat your bookmaker? Well, then it's time to follow the model. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Follow the Model podcast. I'm your host, Seahawks, the founder of ThawBall, and we also have Gates, the architect of the model, on the line. What is up?
Architect is here. We're hitting December. We've talked about the stretch run a lot, but this is now the stretch run. Bye weeks are basically done. We're getting full slates here on out. Playoffs coming up. Let's get it going.
Let's get it going is right, and the model is ready to hit the stretch run in overdrive. And it started last week. In the 1 p.m. slate, we had grand visions of an undefeated week, 3-0 in that 1 p.m. early slot. And then the Eagles were the one loss in the afternoon slot. Last week, 3-1, plus 2.5 units on the season, 35-31, plus 5.5 units as we keep climbing out of that early season hole. Now, Gates, talk to us a little bit about last week.
So after a pretty bad week by the model just across the board, I like to look at it obviously in the games we pick, but also just on what the model's predicting across all games. Last week was pretty bad. This week we had a nice bounce back week, right? And that makes something about 4 in the last 5 where we've had winning weeks. Overall, the model across all games went 7-3, and we were in control for really the 3 games that we won for the most part. Not the Colts so much, but the Colts ended up pulling it out, and that was a nice one. But yeah, Texans and Lions, they ended up, the other teams kind of came back, but Lions were up 21-0 at one point. Texans were in control for a lot of that game. We really liked those plays. And then really just came down to the Eagles. The Eagles didn't show up. Sometimes it's not your week. Maybe should have put a little bit more emphasis into the rest. We always like to look at 10 days off, who's on a bye week. In that game, San Francisco was coming off 10 days rest, and looking at it after the fact, again, hindsight's 2020, but the Eagles did play their 3rd game in 15 days. So maybe just too much caught up to them. They had a really hard slate, as we talked about, playing the Bills and the Chiefs before that game. Might have just been too much all at once. A lot of emotion there. I'm not going to look too much into that. We'll take the L. Let's move on. We're not giving up on the Eagles anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, they've still been dominant for most of the season and rolling to that, what was a 10-1 record. Now they just got their 2nd loss. But yeah, it makes sense not to give up on them, especially, and this is a preview for what's to come, a big divisional matchup that I'm sure they will not be overlooking. But yeah, some Minshew magic. You always love to see it. That helps out. And we move on after a big week 13, and we're on to week 14. So starting in this week, let's hop right into it. And it is those Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. Let's bounce back from that loss to take on the pretenders of the league, the Dallas Cowboys. And the Eagles are getting 3.5 points as they travel to Dallas.
Yeah, so you could make the counter argument that, look, they're playing another team coming off 10 days rest, and I think that's very fair. But I think the Eagles kind of need to get punched in the mouth a bit, right? They've had a lot of these close games that they've pulled out. Now they really got punched in the mouth, and it's going to be, how do they respond? And I think that's what you're going to hear in that locker room. How do they respond? And the biggest thing here is we're getting the hook. They could lose by 3 points, and we still cover this game. And we think that on a neutral field, the Eagles are a better team. So right there, you're getting a lot of value. The Eagles also just signed Darius Leonard, or Shaq Leonard, I should say, as he changed his name. So they signed him away from the Colts, who had cut him. That'll be a nice addition. They were missing their linebacker, Zach Cunningham, last week. We'll see if he can come back as well. And even safety Justin Evans might come back. So and actually even tight end Dallas Goedert, small chance he comes back as well. So might be some small reinforcements. Goddard would be a huge one on offense. But we saw what the Seahawks offense did to that Dallas defense last week. Very surprising considering how they got shut down at home against San Francisco the week prior, right? Geno was throwing it all over the yard. Now, Dallas's offense did look impressive, but I think Philly can really they can get the run and pass going against Dallas's defense. Dallas did beat Seattle. They were trailing for some of that game. That was the first team with a winning record that they've beaten all season. So the jury is still out on this Dallas team. And they just shouldn't be giving 3.5 points. It's got to be under a field goal, even if you're on the Dallas side. It's just too many points, and we got to take it with the Eagles here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been proven. It feels like you can almost always count on the Cowboys to choke in prime time and in a big spot. And this is a big spot going against a bitter rival who they're looking up at in the standings. So I love it. Let's go with Philly and the Eagles about to make Dak and the boys look like the pretenders they are. Moving on to that other team you just mentioned, the Seattle Seahawks, who did play a good game in Dallas, almost got the win, fell just short, but now they're getting a ton of points. This line opened at 12.5. That's where the model hopped on right away. That's why you got to follow the Substack, stay close, and follow that model every day of the week, and you can take advantage of some of those lines. But now the line is plus 11, and they're traveling to San Francisco in another divisional matchup.
Yeah, the Sharps, just like the model, jumped on that 12.5 line. Clearly, it was inflated by that huge win against the Eagles, and it was a huge win. And San Francisco has been incredibly impressive. They've been dominating, but 12.5 points against a Seattle team that we just saw put up 35-plus points against Dallas. It's just way too many points. It's way too many. There's also a good case to be made that in the game that Seattle lost to San Francisco, Geno got hurt in the game prior and had to come back on a Thursday night, right? That was a really quick turnaround. He looked horrible in that game, and you got to think there's a decent chance that he was injured and he just wasn't letting on to it, especially with the way he came back last week. So again, this is just way too many points. There's just value there. That's all there is to it. We obviously appreciate how good San Francisco's been. We don't think Seattle's a juggernaut by any means, but in the NFL, it's too many points for a very quality team and a division rival as well. And Seattle needs to start winning to make it into the playoffs, right? So and against a division rival, it's just all around too many points.
Yeah, and this harkens back to some of the early season Niner hype train where the model was correct in saying, let's not get too carried away with this team. And they promptly went on that 3-game losing streak. This feels almost a similar spot where the entire world is on the Niners.
Yeah, and two other points to pass out there. So one is that Seattle will also be on 10 days rest because they played on Thursday night as well, so they get the rest advantage. And San Francisco's got to fly back cross country from Philly all the way back to San Fran. So a couple of small rest items that we think will help, plus the 12.5, plus the division rivalry. Let's go.
A lot of points for Geno and the boys. Let's see them keep it close. And hey, you never know, could even pull the upset. But that's not what we need. We just need the cover. So we're moving on, and we're going to Atlanta, where I think 2 weeks ago you finally got on the right side of these Falcons for the first time all year. Yep. Finally, the Dirty Birds. I mean, Desmond Ridder keeps getting rid of it in the red zone. That's a criticism, not a compliment, as those red zone turnovers have plagued him and this team all season. But they do seem to be racking up the wins here in November, December, and they're looking to continue that as they host the Buccaneers, giving 2 points.
Yeah, if we could take the quarterbacks out of this equation, the Falcons have a much better team up and down the roster than the Bucs, and the Falcons are at home here. So right now they're giving 2 points. We're seeing a lot of value there. Now, a lot of that is with two of the Bucs' best defenders, maybe their two best that have been out the last couple of weeks, and that's linebacker Levante David and cornerback Jamel Dean. They also have been missing linebacker Devin White. Not quite as important, but when you're missing that many linebackers, it's obviously going to be a huge hole for the defense to have to recover from. So we're going to be monitoring all three of those injuries very closely, especially if the two big ones stay out. That we're definitely taking the Falcons here. And then the big injury to follow for the Falcons is AJ Terrell got concussed this past week. He's their best corner. He's one of the best corners in the league. If he misses that's a big one as well, especially with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. You're going to want a lockdown corner on those guys. So let's stay tuned with the injuries as always. But if we can get this at a field goal or less, and we can keep the injuries about the same as they are right now, we got to love the Dirty Birds here. And we got to pray that Ridder doesn't just throw the game away. Just game manage, man. Just fucking game manage and we'll be okay.
Yeah, let's get one game without a turnover from Ridder. And yeah, so as Gates is saying, stay close to the Substack to get those injury updates and make sure this is an official play on Sunday. You can get that link in the show notes to this episode. So we have one more that that's above the others to watch section, I would say, that you're really eyeing on to become an official play. And that's what is one of the worst modern offenses in modern history. They set some kind of record of consecutive games with under 10 points scored. I forget the actual what came out, but I saw a bunch of tweets about it. And that's the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick, maybe hurting his legacy a little bit here. But the model says, let's ride Belichick, as that defense has still been good, right? So they're +6, and they're headed to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers.
Wait, you're talking about one of the worst modern offense? You're not talking about the New York Jets? It's the Pats we're talking about. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, they're probably the two worst that we've seen in a long time. Here's the deal. Kenny Pickett's out for the Steelers, and we don't think that he's been lights out by any means, but have you watched Mitch Trubisky the last couple of years? Because this guy cannot play quarterback. So I don't see how either team is going to score the ball here. This is going to, the over-under is the lowest I think that there's been in years. If I'm not mistaken, it's around 30 and a half. I can't remember an NFL game being anywhere close to that low. It's insane. But when the over-under is that low, points are even more at a premium. So we're getting 6 points at a premium here in a game where it's the over-under is 30. I mean, I don't see how this game's not going to be like 6-3 or something along those lines, 7-3, 10-7. I mean, I just don't see how it's not going to be one of those low-scoring, keep it close games. And we're getting a full 6. It's just way too many points here. The Pats shut down the Chargers last week. What do we think they're going to do to this Steelers offense? And Pittsburgh, last game, they had a couple big guys go down. They had their best offensive lineman, Isaac Sumalo. He went down. Their linebacker, I'm blanking on his name right now, Landon Roberts, I think, he went down as well. They've already had some injuries at linebackers. They're going to be pretty weak there. Gives us a glimmer of hope for the Pats offense. And who knows? Maybe Bailey Zappi can move the ball just enough to kick a couple field goals, run the Zach Wilson when he's not turning the ball over offense where they march it down to the 30 every time, get field goals, and they score about 12 points and get the cover. That's all we can really ask for you.
Yeah, maybe we'll throw it back on a throwback Thursday night football to some Zeke Elliott wing tee and just get 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That'll be enough possibly for New England to keep it close enough to cover that 6 points. Although you always have to keep in mind that Belichick might be tanking here. So
yeah, I don't know. We'll
something to worry about.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. If he tanks, it'll be at the very end, like missing a field goal to win the game or something like that. So they'll be close enough to get
Right. All right. Those are the 4 plays. We move to the others to watch, and there's 3 of them, although one we'll touch on at the end is probably not going to happen. But the first one is one you're really watching, and that's that Ravens team. The model's been all over all season long. They're -7. They're at home in the friendly confines of Baltimore, and they're getting the Rams traveling cross country.
There's nothing more that we love than backing teams that we've been all over who are in great spots. And that's what we're getting here. We're getting a team that we've been all over, that we love, who might be getting their best cornerback back in Marlon Humphrey, who's been out the last few weeks. Good chance he comes back. Baltimore's coming off a bye, and they're at home, and they've been one of the best home teams over the last however many years, right? And every time we've said this stat multiple times this year, Lamar against the NFC is something like 16-1 or whatever that record is, right? Because these teams aren't prepared to play him. We have another matchup like that this week, and the Rams again flying cross country from LA all the way to Baltimore. There couldn't be a better alignment based on all those factors, right? Puka is going to play, I think, but he got hurt. They're saying like separated shoulder. I don't know how he's going to play, but I think he's going to play in this game. They're a little banged up. Cooper Kupp hasn't been quite the same as years past, right? He's still playing really well, but he's definitely not that same guy. And Matt Stafford out in the cold, right? Just picture it. Matt Stafford out in December outside. I mean, he's not the same guy. He's great when he's indoors, playing in Detroit, playing in LA, loves to sling it. I don't see it happening against this defense outdoors. And really 7 or less, I really like it, right? We definitely don't want to get into 7.5 because you don't want to get screwed on that. But at 7, really like it. We're pretty close to locking this one in.
Yeah, that Stafford back might tighten up in the cold weather. We know that's been a problem for him over the years. But Puka, on that note, he did come back in that game, pretty much immediately ripped off a 30-yard reverse run, looked pretty good even post that injury. I was following closely as I have some fantasy stock in some Puka power.
I got him as well. No, I got him as well. I just saw that it's just kind of crazy. He's just going to keep playing through it, I guess, but we'll see.
Yeah, they're built different out in wherever he's from. but
Why, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I was going to say that, but I wasn't sure, so I just kind of left it where it was. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to a team that's loving their situation of late, and I'm talking, of course, about the Green Bay Packers and their quarterback, Jordan Love. We touched on it last week. You said you're not really buying the hype yet. Now you might be coming around, and it makes sense. You know, sometimes these young quarterbacks take some time to figure out the league. He's shown a lot of flashes even in the early season, and now he's starting to become more consistent. The Packers are -6.5 against our beloved yet horrendous Giants.
It's one of the hardest things to predict, right? In these games, our quarterbacks that you really just don't have a lot of history with, and that's kind of what's been happening to us with Jordan Love, right? He's had a lot of ups and downs this season, and it's hard to get him right. And you know, the last couple of weeks though, he started, and I wasn't going to believe until he started to show us something. He clearly has. He seems to have control of this offense, which it makes sense. You know, that would take a quarterback some time in his first year as a starter. So. I get it. And this Giants defense, they've been playing really well, but they were missing Dexter Lawrence last week. Or 2 weeks ago, I should say, because they are coming off a bye. If Dexter Lawrence plays, then we're probably taking this off the table. We're just not seeing enough value here because I could see the Packers winning a close game. They got the big win against the Chiefs. You know, this is it's just not the best spot for them because they're -6.5 on the road going against a team on a bye. But it is my guy, Tommy DeVito. I mean, as fun as this season's been, I think the miracle ride ends here, right? Like, I just don't know how much longer this can continue. They beat up on a couple bad teams, but I think it's all over probably. The Packers also might be getting back cornerback Jair Alexander. He's been out forever. Maybe this is the week he comes back as well. So we'll monitor those two injuries. Dexter Lawrence, though, the big one. He's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And if he's playing, he can disrupt a game by himself. So that would be the worry. But we need the Giants to start getting some losses. Listen, it was fun while it lasted, but we need to get a good draft pick. We're not making the playoffs. Enough's enough.
Enough's enough, Tommy DeVito. We don't need any more wins this season, but thanks for the fun. We needed a little bit of a bright spot in New York, or should I say the dump that is in New Jersey at MetLife Stadium. So moving on, we're talking about the other New York team, and I think when push comes to shove, I don't know. I think the model might be telling you to take it, but the architect might get a little gun shy because this Jets offense, we were talking about the Pats, but this one is just as bad. And when you have to go from Timmy Boyle to Trevor Siemian, not the man, then, you know, we're talking about ineptitudes that are unseen in this league. But they are getting 6 points, and they are at home against the Texans.
Yeah, and again, the sharps are on the same side as the model here, right? This line was at 6.5. It's down to 6. In some places, it's 5.5. So people are seeing the value in the Jets as we are. But it just comes down to sometimes that value doesn't matter when you look at the quarterbacks across the side. The Jets can't even decide who their quarterback's going to be. Zach Wilson doesn't even want to take the reins again. There's all this drama going on there. The Jets probably have the best defense in the NFL. They really probably do. But when you keep giving the ball back time and time again and going 3 and out, CJ Stroud's he's going to put up points at some point. You can only contain him for so long if your offense can't sustain any sort of a drive, right? And so that's the worry here. We're seeing value just like sharps are seeing it, but I think we're going to have to stay away because we can't have another loss at the hands of Zach Wilson or whoever the hell is going to be quarterback of that offense.
Yeah, I hear you. That's tough to stomach, and also tough to stomach for Texans fans is that Tank Dell injury, but they do have a lot of weapons, and hopefully Noah Brown and some others can step up to fill the void and keep that offense rolling along towards the playoffs for one of the best stories of this season. So those are the games, the plays, the ones we're watching. Anything else you want to mention?
Not much. I like to do this now. We're getting to the stretch run. Just hit on where the model has the top teams right now. Right now, we got Philly, Baltimore, San Fran, all neck and neck at the top. Miami's dropped down because they've had some injuries. They've got Jalen Phillips, we already told you about. They got Robert Hunt on the offensive line. One of their linebackers, Jerome Baker, went down. So, we got to watch all the injuries as we get closer and closer. But yeah, right now we're seeing Philly, Baltimore, San Fran as kind of the top class, and then everyone else a little bit underneath them.
And that's also a preview for any futures you want to place as we head towards the playoffs, which is where the model really shines and really places some big unit plays to go along with those big time games in the playoffs. So that's all we got for week 14. This is the Follow the Model podcast, and we're signing off.